All right. Matthew chapter 5 is where we're going to pick up. Troy has been going over the life of Christ with you, and I had taught this particular lesson on the Beatitudes a few Wednesday nights ago, and so he asked me, he's like, since you're filling in preaching, why don't you just fill in Bible class and do that same lesson over again? So, don't know that it'll be the same, but we'll try and cover it best we can, trying to adapt it to this class. I don't know about y'all, I'm excited that it's March. I'm so tired of winter. It was nice to get out and actually work in the yard and wash cars in a pair of shorts. Man, it was so nice. And then I get on Facebook and I see that there are, in fact, 4 seasons in Florida, and it cracked me up. You have pollen season, then you have summer, and the picture for summer was 2 people sitting on a beach in their beach chairs with a big black cloud over the top of them. Then you have hurricane season, and then you have football season. So those are the 4 seasons in Florida. So, and I was like, I don't think I've seen anything as accurate so far. So, I'm getting started with this. The life of Christ. The one thing that I stated in our previous class is this: is God doesn't make mistakes. God doesn't do anything by happenstance. God doesn't do anything by accident, and so neither would His Son. His Son was sent to be the propitiation for our sins, to be the extension of God in the flesh, and so this reconnection that we're going to have with God. So Jesus Himself would not make any mistakes either. So I don't find it as a coincidence that He preaches this sermon. To begin, basically, we call this the beginning of His ministry in a way. This is like His first great sermon that He preaches. No coincidence that these are the things He discusses. Everything that is contained within Matthew chapter 5, 6, and 7 are basically the foundation that He's going to build His ministry off of, are the things that we're going to build our life off of. They're the foundational principles that we're going to live by. But especially the ones we're going to look at this morning, the Beatitudes, we're going to camp out here and look at these things. This is the foundation. Everything within these words right here, we can derive our guidance and our wisdom that we'll seek anywhere else. And so I don't find it that it's a coincidence. I find it very purposeful. That these are the true and honest words of God that Jesus is speaking when He begins this sermon. We call it this great sermon, but if you've ever heard it recited, and I'm sure maybe there's more to it, and He probably put more emphasis in it, it's not a sermon like we would preach. It's not 30 or 40 minutes, it's about 10. So if I were to recite this, it would be about 10 minutes. So not this grandiose, a long 2-hour long sermon. It's about 10 minutes, but it's straight to the point. And so we look at this and we see, well, if this is the foundational principle we're going to build off of, what is He saying? And so I'm going to get your feedback this morning. I don't want to stand up here and lecture. I will if I have to, but I don't want to. And so we're going to look at the Beatitudes, and I want your feedback from this. I want us to critically think about the message that Jesus is sending this morning. And so He begins His sermon, and it says in verse 2 of Matthew chapter 5, He opened His mouth and He taught them, saying this: Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of God. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. And blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And blessed are you when others revile you, persecute you, and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven, for so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. A scholar that is more well-versed in Greek than I am, and Troy is as well, the Greek translation of this word, blessed, if you are to see what this really means, is like we think about blessed as we talk about blessed and blessed are 2 different things, but this word here means supremely blessed. Now think about it like this. So if we're going to look at these principles of Christianity, the one who attains and acquires these principles in their life and able to live them out supremely blessed is their life. And see, we seek blessing, and we seek gain, and we seek notoriety and things in so many other places. And the message Jesus is trying to send is that you're not going to find a richer, truer, more fulfilling life anywhere else than you'll find right here. That is the message summed up. You're not going to find a fuller life than you will when you acquire and attain these principles in your own life. And so what are these principles look like? What is this telling us? And so let's start here in verse 3, and let's break this down. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. What does it mean to be poor in spirit? What does he mean right here when he says, blessed are those who are poor in spirit? Not everybody at one time. Okay, heart maybe not in the right place. All right. Feel free to speak up. There are more wise minds in this room than the one standing up in front of you. I can assure you of that. So I'll take all the wisdom I can get. Okay. All right. I think there's the key. We're starting to get somewhere. There's this absence of something. If I'm poor, I'm lacking. That's the idea. If I'm poor, I'm lacking in something. So he says, blessed are those who are poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. It's this recognition that I'm incomplete. It's this recognition that I'm lacking without God. That if I lack the Spirit of God, if I lack God in my life, then I'm incomplete. I have nothing. So those that recognize this, that they have this recognition that they're poor in spirit, theirs is the kingdom of heaven. This is a stepping stool right here. We're climbing the ladder. This is the first step, is that before we can attain any of these things, we have to recognize that without God, we're incomplete. We're poor. We really are poor. And so blessed are those who recognize they're poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Any comments on that? Anything else that you would attach to that? Yes.
Proud in spirit.
Yes.
So, that's the way I use it to try to figure out what he's saying.
Yeah, I appreciate that very much. Is that we can't have that recognition that we're incomplete if we think if we're full of ourselves. Really, if we're full of ourselves, then we're not poor at all. So. It's the recognition that you're poor in spirit, that you're incomplete without God. Yeah, it's this recognition that I'm lacking without God. And so if I recognize that I'm lacking without God, I'm going to seek God. And if I'm seeking God, the kingdom of heaven, that's what I'm seeking, is this kingdom. Yes. Poor but in spirit, perhaps. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah, that's true. I'm using the English Standard Version if anybody wants to know. I know sometimes our translations are a little different. Okay? Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Right. Yeah, being humble in my spirit, having humility. I think that would go perfectly. Very much so. Yes. Yes. I think that's spot on right there. Yeah, we get so full of our own lives and we're not recognizing that. Yeah, I love that. I don't want to add anything to that because I'm going to take away from it because I'll botch it up. So, yes. Right. Yes. Thank you. See, I told y'all there were more wise minds in here than mine. I know, right? Yeah, all I got to do is stand up here and just kind of facilitate. This idea is that you are going to be blessed by this. God is going to fulfill these needs. Let's talk about what it is to mourn then. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. I think sometimes we look at mourn and we think about our sadness, and that's all we can think about sometimes is blessed are those who are those that cry, or whatever, or those that are just weepy, sad people. I don't think this is the point. What do you think he means here by blessed are those who mourn? Yeah, and that's a good point, is that we're going to even mourn over those that are sinners, those that are lost. We're going to be comforted in that. Okay, what else? What would he mean here by mourn?
Grieve our own sin.
Yeah, there you go.
Why are we sinners? Why have we sinned? Why do we do what God wants to do? I think that's...
Yeah.
You must mourn your own sin. If you don't, you can't repent.
Absolutely. Yes.
If that's not repenting. Grieving is the repenting, but that's what it takes godly sorrow.
Yes.
Brings repentance.
Yes.
Do you honestly feel you grieve your own sin?
Thank you for that. Yeah, that's what we're looking for right there, is this: blessed are those who are going to mourn, who really recognize. We looked at, if you're poor in spirit, you're lacking. You see that you're lacking, you're incomplete without God. Why are we incomplete? Why are we disconnected from God? Because we're sinners. Because we're sinners and we've separated ourselves from God. So this lack in our life is because we have pushed God away. And it's because of my sin. And so the recognition of that, I'm going to mourn my sin. Yeah, I love that. We're going to mourn our sin. And God is going to comfort us in those things. Anybody else? You see, it's a climbing the ladder right here. We've recognized our poor in spirit. Now we're mourning that sin, that separation. And then he says, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are the meek. Troy describes meekness probably the best I've ever heard it, and you've probably heard it this way too, but basically strength and power under control. Harnessing strength, harnessing power, using it when it needs to be used, but that's meekness. He always tells me, he's like, meek is not weak. And I know we throw that one around all the time in the church. Meek is not weak. It's not weakness. It goes back to this idea of humility. This idea of humility and strength and power under control. What else would you see there? Yeah, know when to use that strength. What else would you see there? Blessed are the meek. Supremely blessed are those that are meek. Gentle. Oh, I think that's... Okay. Yeah, blessed are... Yeah, humility and gentleness. I'll say this, is looking at it from this perspective, is especially if we're climbing the ladder, when we become Christians, a lot of times we're very gung-ho, and we have knowledge, and we're just like, we're ready to go out and just hammer down with it. We're ready to go and just spread it into the world, and we're really powerful. I mean, we are firing on all cylinders. We're ready to take anyone on as it comes to our faith, as it pertains to our faith. I even think back to the 50s, and I'm sorry if I'm offending your generation here, but the generation of those that wanted to go into the world and swing around their power and debate everybody to death and this and that, that's not gentleness or humility. We're looking for a fight. I have an article, as a matter of fact, in the bulletin this week about that, is that Christians aren't out in the world looking for a fight. They're ready to defend. We're armed with the sword of the Spirit when it's needed, but this is the power and the strength under control. We use it when it's needed. We don't go out looking to fight people and defeat people. We're not looking for a war. We're involved in a war, but we don't get up ready every day hoping to go to war. And so this idea of strength under control. Yes, sir?
You know, it's interesting because it says initial repair to the earth.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little different response or conclusion than others.
Yeah.
This idea of to be comforted and, by the kingdom of heaven, repair to the earth. But I guess some authors suggest this might be reference to the land of Canaan.
Yeah.
So that you'll receive that promise.
Right.
So maybe that's the way.
Okay. I've never heard that. That is interesting.
If you're truly meek, you're not going to go out broadcast. I'm meek, I'm lowly, I do all this stuff, and let everybody know. But you just don't say nothing.
Okay.
They'll know if you're meek by your action.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah, we don't have to go out and broadcast it to everyone. That's right. I would agree with that. Anything else on that? All right, this next one's my favorite. This next one, I think, is where the meat starts to come in. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. How many in the world, and I think he's even talking to them, but it still applies to us today. He's talking to these people, and throughout history, human beings, our human nature is to attain all that we can. We want all that we can. We want to be comfortable. We maybe want to get an education. We want to have families. We want to have kids. We want to have good jobs. We want to have possessions and this and that. And we're always seeking to satisfy need. And he says here, those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, that's where the satisfaction will come. Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and everything else will be taken care of. All these things will be added unto you. We look at John chapter 6. You don't have to go there, but in John chapter 6, he feeds the 5,000, and after they wake up the next morning, they're hungry again, and they're searching for him to fulfill a need. I need you to feed me again. Their one thing that they could think about was that I'm hungry, my belly is empty, and he's like, that's not what I'm here for. I'm here to satisfy another need. And he offers them himself, and he offers them him in the form of bread. I'm the bread of life. I am the living water. And if you accept me, you will be filled. And you will never hunger or thirst again. And so, with that in mind, what's he saying here? Hunger and thirst for righteousness.
Well, he's not hungry and he's not thirsty.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's this idea. If you're anybody, I don't think anybody in here has ever maybe been, starving. We use this word a lot. I use that word a lot. If I don't eat within 4 hours, I'm like, man, I'm starving. Dude, I'm starving. The other night at the hockey game, I didn't eat before I went, and about the second period, I'm like, dude, I'm starving. I don't even know what starving feels like, y'all. You can tell. I don't. I don't know what starving feels like. I don't know what it is to be supremely thirsty, because I've always had my fill. We all have. This idea of hungering and thirsting is that there's this need that needs to be filled, that needs to be satisfied, and you can't get enough. Like, I have to have this. It's this idea of quenching myself, is that I have to get this, but when I get it, it's not going to be enough. And I think that's the point, is that we're not just going to gain a little bit of knowledge. We're not just going to gain a little bit of righteousness in our life and be like, I feel pretty good about myself. That goes back to being not poor in spirit anymore. I feel pretty good about where I'm at. I feel pretty good about what I know. I feel pretty good about how I live. That's not the point. The point is, as he said, is that it's a continual longing, a continual basically search, journey to gain more and more righteousness, to gain more and more knowledge, to get closer and closer and closer to God. It's never ending. Yes, sir.
You know, when you go back to the end of chapter 4, why were all these people following him? Because he was still in there, he was taking care of their infirmities and all that. And I think, once again, the master teacher is trying to take our eyes off the physical needs and shift to spiritual needs. And he's saying, you know, blessed are those that are poor in spirit, that rely on God. Blessed are those that mourn. They mourn about their sins. They know where they're at. Blessed are those that are meek. They take it off of me and what I can do. And then it says, finally, those that are hungry for righteousness. You know, if you've ever been in that place and you're studying so hard and you didn't feel nothing, you walk away like, oh, and then you can't wait to come back again.
Yeah.
That's what he's saying. Learn
Yeah.
totally rely on God. That's, us as people living in the physical world, it's so hard to understand.
Mm-hmm.
But, like you were saying, feeding your physical needs, that's easy to do. But how do we feed our spiritual needs? We have to hunger
Yeah.
for what God has set forth for us. And that's when it should just go.
Yeah.
That's my
Absolutely. That's powerful. Yes. That's it. Is that this idea of we can't get enough. I can't wait to come back. It's kind of like having Miss Arva's sweet potato casserole. You know what I'm saying? You can't wait to come back to it. I had to attach some sort of food there. But yeah, that's the idea. We read books and things like that, and if you read a book and you get to the end of the chapter, it's like, I need to put this down, but I don't want to put it down because I want to see what happens. That's the same thing about righteousness, is that you're gaining knowledge, you're gaining in this relationship with God, you're getting closer and closer to God the more that you're in this Word, to the point where when you get to a point, maybe you have to kind of put it down. You don't want to. I don't want to stop. I can't get enough. I'm hungry. I'm thirsty. I've got to have it. That's the idea behind it, and that's what's so difficult. Is he just said we can fulfill our physical needs, but have we ever been to that point where it's like, I can't get enough of God? Maybe that's difficult to do, but I think that's what we're working toward, is the fact that my mindset is that I don't want to stop growing. I don't want to stop learning. I don't want to stop being in this relationship with God. I can't get enough of it. Hungry and thirsty for righteousness. And he says, you will be satisfied. Yes, sir. Amen. Yeah.
But it's what we study and learn and use.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like
Right, yeah. Well, it's just like having a plate full right there. If you're hungry and you don't eat it, then you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I think that's a great point. It really is. It's not the fact that we have the knowledge, but what are you going to do with the knowledge? All right? Anything else? All right. Step in that ladder. Here we go. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. When I see this, we look at this idea of acknowledging our absence of a relationship with God, mourning that sin that separated us, being humble enough to accept those things and having this strength under control that we have, hungering and thirsting for that relationship and that knowledge and that growth. And then it makes me think of the unforgiving servant. That's where we end up a lot of times. We had a class on this, and Troy did a lesson on this a few Sundays ago, and one of our Bible studies was about this particular subject, and it's the one we wrestle with the hardest. Being merciful. Being merciful is about compassion and forgiveness and seeing people through the eyes of God. That's difficult. You see, the unforgiving servant is that he has this great debt that Troy gave us that visual, which was so awesome, this great debt that could never be paid. It's impossible. Impossible to be paid, and it's forgiven. Slate wiped clean. And then someone owes that guy debt that is very much payable, nowhere near the debt he owed, and he throws the guy in prison. No compassion, no concern for that human being, but only himself. I think this is Jesus talking as we grow in our faith here. Remember what got you to this point. Remember what got you to where you're at right now is that you are nothing, going back to poor in spirit, you are nothing without me. You are nothing without my sacrifice. You are nothing without my Father's mercy, compassion, and forgiveness. Don't forget that. Because we as human beings, our nature is to pass judgment. Very quickly, very easily, very sharply to other people. He's like, be aware. Be aware of the judgment that you're going to pass to people. Blessed are those who are merciful, for you will receive mercy if you're merciful to other people. He says even in Matthew chapter 6 when he's teaching them to pray, forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And he says, for if you do not forgive your debts, forgive your debtors, you will not be forgiven of your own debt. I think there's a beautiful picture here, but a very, very sharp and dangerous picture if we don't heed the words of Jesus. Blessed are the merciful, supremely blessed if you can find it in your heart to see the world through the eyes of God and have compassion and mercy and forgiveness in your heart.
This whole list is, he's contrasting life here
Mm-hmm.
with what God wants to do for us.
Yeah.
What the actual kingdom of heaven, in heaven, will be like compared to how miserable things on earth can be. And in this one specifically, I'm reminded of the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Treat other people the way you'd like them to treat you. When Jesus did his prayer, his example prayer, forgive us our debts as we forgive those who have debts against us. It's like you're talking about the people who have offended us. He's tying that right in here. You are merciful, God will be merciful to you.
Absolutely.
And it all comes back to that golden rule and how much better God is going to be towards us based on our attitude and our behavior here.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. I would totally agree with that because I think about this. If we're all looking to get to heaven and be reunited with God, can we unite with God and another person, another Christian, if we're holding a grudge against them? No. If we've not been merciful to that person and we're not willing to forgive them, how is God willing to unite with us and forgive us? It just goes hand in hand.
Here's another point about forgiveness. This. When you think about forgiveness, it's more about you, yourself, than about the other person.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Anyone else? All right, this next one I'm going to need some help with. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the pure in heart. What does it mean to be pure in heart?
Sincere.
Okay, sincerity. All right. I think that's correct. What's that?
Without sin.
Okay, without sin. Are we ever going to be without sin? So it's the process of seeking to be without sin. Okay. What else? Be pure in heart. Okay, thoughts. I mean, it encompasses everything about our life. Our actions, our words, our thoughts, everything is that we are seeking purity. We're seeking this idea of trying to be like Christ. Pure, spotless, clean, holy. And we'll never get there. No, we'll never get there. But it's the process of trying to get there. Blessed are those who are seeking such things. What other thoughts of being pure in heart?
Acts 15, verse 9, Luke says, I'll read it out of context, but I think you can see it. He says, he's talking about some things. He says, and he made no distinction between us and them, here's the key, having cleansed their hearts by faith. It's your faithfulness to
There you go.
God that cleanses your Bible heart.
Absolutely.
Your mind. So faith, faithfulness. It's not just belief.
Right.
It's your faithfulness to God. And Luke says here that it cleanses your hearts. So that's as close as I can come with another using Bible to try to figure out.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. Great point. Anyone else? A forgiving heart? Yeah. Yeah, I think that would go right along with it. I think that would go right along with it.
Okay, if you go back to lead us in 1 John 4, verse 6, obedience by faith. This has all to do with love, and merciful, caring. Because if someone says, I love God, and hates his brother, he is a liar. He who does not love his brother, who has sinned, how can he love God, who he has not sinned? And this commandment we have from him, that he who loves God, loves his brother also. Love should be what drives Christians. Because without love, you don't have anything.
Absolutely.
And without love, well, we know the results, what's going to happen.
Yeah, you're right. Here's something I'd like to add to this aspect of being pure in heart. Thinking of it from what Jack said about this idea of faithfulness, not just belief in God, but faithfulness. Trying to add these things to our lives. The world has a very skewed view of what faithfulness is. Faithfulness, like we even say, we will actually call a person a faithful Christian because they are perfectly attending worship. I can put a mannequin in here and he can be here 24/7 sitting in these pews. Is he faithful? Absolutely.
He's faithful about attending.
Yeah.
That's it.
Right. It's a faithful and attending just because we are sitting in the pew, just because we're in the building. Guys, this is easy. What he's talking about is not being gathered together with other Christians, being faithful to one another. That's an element, that's an aspect of it. But it's out there where it's hard. It's attaching and attaining the purity while we're in the world, but not of the world. That's the difficult part. Not here. And that's the skewed. It's like being pure in heart, being faithful. This is easy. We can do this. We can do this all day. There are some people that struggle with this, but really, let's talk about it. This is easy. Sundays and Wednesdays, this is easy.
It's easy to say a bad word to God.
Yeah.
I mean, here, too, there'll be pressure on you, because you're always under
There you go. Yeah. Nobody puts any pressure on you to be unfaithful and unfruitful and ungodly here. If they are, then shame on you. But here, we're not under. I love what Joey says. We're not under that pressure to do that. Purity is attained from being under that pressure and not succumbing to that pressure, not succumbing to that temptation. Yeah. 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 Right. That's a great point. And let me continue with that. Do you think what he may even mean here is not that they'll just see God, but they'll see the way God sees? You think about this, is that the way Jesus looked at the world was they were harassed, helpless, like a sheep with no shepherd. We see it as evil and vile and that it needs to be done away with. Two different views there. Blessed are they pure in heart. If we're seeking faithfulness and to become more like Christ in every aspect, we're trying to live our lives and identify more with Christ and see the world through His eyes. That's what we're trying to get to. This idea of purity. And we can't give purity to the world, and they can't see God in us if we identify more closely with them. You know? So. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. There it is. All wrapped up into one right there. This idea of peace, I want to continue that. We're running out of time. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. I think this kind of ties in with mercy, things like that. Anybody got a thought on that as we move on? I told our class as we talked about it in the class I did before this, is that blessed are the peacemakers. I don't think this necessarily comes to the point of being able to make peace between two parties or whatever it is as it pertains to earthly situations, but I think this is an eternal thing. This is being a peacemaker for God. You want to be called sons of God. You want to make peace. We are the evidence of peace. We are those that are bringing peace to the world. The only peace that anyone can have in this world is through Jesus Christ, and who's going to give it to them? Us. We are the peacemakers. We are the connecting point between someone that's lost and Jesus. We're there to show them peace. So there's another way of looking at that, if you will, if you'll allow me to say that, in being a peacemaker.
I think you're right on. Who's the Prince of Peace?
Yeah.
Isaiah said, geez, what did that mean? Reconciliation to God. He's the Prince of the ability to be reconciled to God. Without Him, you can't be.
Right.
So as you help another human be reconciled to God, you become a supreme peacemaker, right?
Yeah.
I think that is the right. Yeah, it's fine reconciling this guy to this guy.
Right.
That's part of humanness. Big reconciliation is vertical, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Prince of Peace showed that.
Yeah, thank you. All right, the last one is this, and I think we're out of time, so thank you for being patient. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you, utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. And what does he say? This is going to happen. As you attain these attributes, as you try and apply these principles to your life, this is going to happen. Supremely blessed are you. What does that mean? How am I going to be supremely blessed? If I'm being attacked, if I'm being persecuted, if I'm being falsely accused of things and my integrity is being damaged, or so I think to other people, how is that blessing me? Sometimes I think we see blessing as an earthly attribute as well. This supremely blessed concept may not apply until then, until eternity. Supremely blessed are you. When these things happen to you, and he says, rejoice and be glad in it. The apostles walked away and they rejoiced because they felt it an honor to be identified with Jesus, to be persecuted like he was persecuted. He says, rejoice and be glad. Your reward, the eternal, is great in heaven. That's it. That is the supreme blessing. There is nothing here that will compare to that reward. But that's the point, as I think he's trying to get us to focus on the eternal, not the earthly. If we want to have our minds changed and to be different and separate from the world, we have to start thinking differently. And this is the path to that, is seeing the reward that's eternal. It's what he talked about a minute ago, the vertical, and not what's here. Any comments before we dismiss the class?
I hope everyone reads what Troy put on the front of the bulletin this Sunday, because there's a lot of wisdom in what he wrote this Sunday.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you guys very much. I enjoyed it.